But the roughing and aspect was not, but they made fantastic pieces. I've always wanted to do that. So one of the things that and then you communicate today. Oh, you're gonna go good? And where's not you going to? I was coming back going through security and from Madrid, and there's somebody and they had taken their leash dog with them and bringing it back. And we need to go over this. Yeah. I mean, when we were gone through this 3 weeks, one might talk. I have not. No, they didn't. They don't work. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I didn't even check because they stopped printing the package. So I don't know what. Well, I'm very good. So, thank you for telling me. Should I feel so yeah, I mean I'm a little nervous about playing. Let me ask. And is he going to be? Can he fit under the seat? He's 80 years old, but he doesn't change things. And he can stand, lay down, turn around. So going down to stop, take him out. So he'll have 10 hours of but he's got people. The only thing I'm worried about is but apparently they don't want dogs to die to watch. No, they really don't. And so yeah, we're lucky because we need some big going. He's working on his French and German. If you say "Five Fuß" to him, he knows exactly what to do. But you have to do it in that German way. "Five Fuß." With his barking, this German accent. And when he comes back, he'll look at the 7 countries and it's like 10 states and 7 countries. Ready to go? Dylan? Yeah. The state. I don't know. So you need to use we also he's already been seated this week. No, we haven't started yet. No, that's okay. I don't feel that great. Okay. Hi. Feel better.
Okay, I'm going to call the July 13th, 2022 meeting of the Manatee Springs Planning Commission to order. So I'll start. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Wilson. Present. Commissioner Reagan. Present. Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Latimer. Present. And Commissioner Graver. Present. Okay. So there are no minutes, so we'll skip the approval of minutes at this point. And we're going to do the business part of the meeting, and I'll start just by describing the process. The chair will call an item for consideration. Planning staff will describe the applicant's request and provide their analysis and findings based on the applicant's application. Following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to state their case and provide any additional information that they wish to provide to the commission. And during this process, commissioners may ask questions of staff or the applicant. After the commission is finished with their questions, the hearing will be open for public comment from those in attendance. You'll be able to state your thoughts regarding the item under consideration at that time. After all public comment has been heard, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing, and the commissioners will deliberate and act on the item under consideration by voting to support or deny the item, possibly may table the item or may modify it somewhat. As the commission deliberates, they'll be guided by the zoning and subdivision codes. We make our decision based only on our interpretation of whether the request meets the criteria of the codes. So with that, are there any conflicts or ex parte contests to discuss? Okay. Start. First item is variance 2203, maximum front yard setback 125 feet where 50 feet is required. 284 Chris Park Road, Lindsay Thailand, applicant on behalf of David and Melissa Stinson.
Good evening, commissioners. The following request is for a variance 284 Crystal Park Road regarding the maximum front yard setback requirement in the HLDR zone. That maximum front setback in the code is set at 50 feet. The applicants are requesting relief from the strict application of the zoning code to allow for a front yard setback of 125 feet to allow construction of a single family residence. As mentioned in the previous slide, the applicants request approval of front yard setback variance to exceed the 50-foot maximum setback allowed in the zoning code. And this is to maintain consistency with the surrounding homes under the zoning designation in the immediate area and provide the best buildable area on the property to be utilized for the construction. 284 Crystal Park Road is a single platted lot, which is required for development in the zoning code, and it's platted as Lot 10 Manitou Mesa. The minimum lot size in the HLDR zone is based on the average slope of the lot, which maxes out at a minimum lot size requirement of 90,000 square feet per lot exceeding 50% or more slope. The subject property has slopes ranging over 80% on the upper steeper portions of the lot, but exceeds the 90,000 square foot minimum lot size requirement. Staff finds the subject property to be in compliance with the zoning and subdivision code for development in terms of meeting this requirement without the need for replatting or further variances. The site plan indicates that all other zoning requirements will be met with the exception of the relief from this maximum front yard setback. The applicants are requesting a variance of 75 feet to this requirement to allow a maximum setback of 125 feet. The site plan shown on the screen there depicts a front setback of 114.8 feet from the front property line to the proposed residence, and are requesting the additional 10 feet of the variance to allow some flexibility in case there was an unforeseen need to push the building back any further due to the placement of the septic system. Parking on the property will be accommodated at the front of the residence, and a parking area is depicted on the site plan in this location. However, staff is unsure whether the parking area will remain uncovered as shown on the site plan, or whether an open parking area below a proposed deck, which is not shown on the site plan, but in the rendering of the home that was provided in the packet and will be shown on the next slide. The geohazard letter also indicates the possibility of an attached garage in this location as well. The applicants can respond to their intentions regarding the parking area when asked to speak on behalf of their request. The next slide shows a preliminary rendering of what the home is proposed to look like. It depicts a covered parking area accommodating one vehicle underneath an open deck, which were not specifically shown on the site plan regarding the variance request. Code requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces per single family residence, and the site plan for the variance depicts an asphalt driveway and parking area measuring approximately 35 feet by 14 feet. Staff notes the site plan and rendering depict a straight in or 90-degree angle, which requires each parking space or parking area to measure a minimum of 9 feet in width and 18 feet in depth. So this will need to be reflected on the final site plan submitted for plan review and permitting at those required dimensions based on that angle. If the applicants are proposing an attached garage at the front of the residence rather than what's depicted on the site plan or rendering, this will need to be reflected on the final site plan at the time of permitting with the setback distances measured from the property lines to that nearest structure. If this maximum variance request is approved, staff does not have any concerns regarding the deck, parking areas, or potential garage meeting the minimum setback requirements set forth in the code for this fund. The applicants provided a tier 1 geohazard report and letter performed by the Rocky Mountain Group. What the letter said is that the northern portion of the lot that's not proposed for the development is susceptible to reflow and erosion along defined drainage valleys. Erosion can also occur along the banks of the drainage easement, particularly during heavy rainstorms. The site is not susceptible to rockfall despite steep slopes, and RMG indicates no further study is needed under the current proposal. They did make a recommendation, however, that the property owner should periodically observe the banks of the drainage easement for signs of any new or localized erosion. Regarding the various criteria in the code, the commissioners have been provided with what those 7 criteria are. But these criteria generally outline the following: strict application of the code will create undue hardship. There are no alternatives. The code deprives the property owner of rights enjoyed by other property owners in the same district. The need for the variance is not self-imposed. The grading of the variance will not alter the character of the neighborhood, allow development in hazardous areas, or have an adverse effect on the environment, and that the variance will follow the spirit and intent of the code and not ensure the public safety or welfare. There are 14 properties in the vicinity that are under the same HLDR zoning designation, except for the subject property. All but one are constructed with homes that exceed the maximum 50-foot setback. However, those homes were constructed between 1995 and 2007, which predates that maximum setback requirement. While the applicant has alternatives which may make the house compliant with the maximum setback, a placement closer to Crystal Park Road would not align with the character exhibited along the roadway adjacent in this zone. Further, the placement of the septic system further restricts the alternative placement for the home closer to Crystal Park to meet county and state code requirements regarding these systems. In the staff's opinion, the strict application of this code would deprive the subject property of development rights enjoyed by adjacent properties in the area. It is staff's understanding that the intent of the maximum setback is to push homes closer to the roadway in order to improve the fire department's ability to defend the property in the event of a wildfire. But in review of the subject variance, the fire department did not voice concern with the proposed setback because the home would still be located in the front third of the subject property, and the fire department does not see any issues with their ability to defend that location. So it is staff's opinion that the request meets the spirit and intent of the code and would not be injurious to the public safety or welfare. Although not specifically mentioned by the fire department as part of the review for this setback request, the applicant should be aware that depending on the location of the nearest fire hydrant in relation to the proposed development, the fire department may require the installation of a code compliant fire hydrant or for the residents to be sprinkled. This may come up as part of the plan review and permitting process for the residents when the fire department reviews the submitted plans for the building permit. Planning staff recommends that the applicants contact the fire department to discuss any of those potential requirements related to fire code prior to submitting construction plans for review. Staff has received 2 letters from surrounding neighbors in support of the request. We did not receive those in time for the publication of the packet, but hard copies have been provided for the commissioners at the dais. Staff recommends approval of variance 2203 to allow a maximum setback of 125 feet, where 50 feet is the maximum at 284 Crystal Park Road, with the following conditions. 1, the approval of the variance is valid for 1 year from the date of approval unless the building permit for construction on the subject property is obtained and remains valid for completion of the construction of the new residence. 1 request for extension may be administratively approved by the planning director for good cause. And 2, the applicant will work with Manatee Springs Fire Department on the wildfire mitigation site assessment, which will be required for permitting, and any other fire code requirements which may impact the development of the new residence. So that concludes the staff presentation. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Okay, so since there's none, the applicant can step up to the table and.
Understand.
Yeah, oh, sit and,
Okay. Daryl David Stinson.
oh, so you have to push the button there then.
With my voice, I probably don't.
And you have to be like about 3 inches from it to get it onto the YouTube stream and so.
Okay.
Great. So you state your name and address for the record, please.
Daryl David Stinson, and our address is 284 Crystal Park.
My current address.
Yes.
Oh, your address. Your.
I'm trying to ask my wife.
Now you should know that.
Hanoverton, 27. We just moved 2 weeks ago. We've been 3 different addresses here. 284 Hanover Town, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, so the floor is yours. So.
Well, thank you, Dylan, and everyone.
I guess.
Get closer.
Yeah, we can hear you, but anybody who's watching online, maybe not.
And I didn't realize we're online. But go by David, and this is Lindsay, our general contractor. And I guess first, thank you, and we really want to be able to build a house here. It's 2.5 acre lot, and it's been available for almost 8 years. It's really hard to build on this piece of property. You've got a creek bed that divides it in the center. It's got a really steep part in the back part of the lot, and there's really only one feasible building area for our house. And we've come up with a design and a position where we can turn it and make it fit. It'll be bumping up against a 25-foot, but you can see the rendering. I think it's going to be a spectacular home. But there's not really any other place. If we can't build on that location, I don't see how anyone, or we could not build on this location. For the same reasons Dylan mentioned, part of it is because you have to put a septic. They're about 3 houses away from being on city sewer. So we have to be a septic. And we have to be so far away from the intimate trail and so far away from the drainage ditch and so far away from the road. So this site that we're suggesting is really the only one someone could build on. To address, does anybody get the picture back up, Dylan, of our site plan there, or the rendering? I guess the rendering. We have worked and we understand the requirement to have a 2-car garage and be at least 18 feet for each vehicle. We are also told that in Colorado you don't want them open. You want enclosed garage. So we're moving from Texas and realize you do want that to be enclosed. So what's in the rendering there is a open air parking site. So we have extended it back 6 feet more in the back and 1 feet closer in the front. So you can park 2 cars in an enclosed garage. There will be an enclosed attached garage. There will be parking 1 car right behind the other. 37 feet, it's 37 feet, so it's able to fit the two cars in there and being close. So we understand that's important in Colorado winters. So much fun. I guess I am. But anyway, we do want to build here and ask for your help to make it possible.
Questions? I think you answered the one question we had about the garage. So, thank you. So if you have nothing more to add, then we can come back. And if we have questions, we'll bring you back.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience would like to comment on this item? Now is the time. There's no kind of comments, so we'll close the public comment and we can discuss.
Given the staff recommendation and the notes from the residents nearby, I don't have any objection to this.
We can make a motion.
I have to make a motion. I move variant approval of variance 2203 to 284 Bristol Park Road to allow the front setback of 125 feet with the following conditions.
So second. Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm happy to support this. I think it's a really good plan. I really like the fact that it fits into the neighborhood. But I do want to point out a few things. And this is nobody's fault or anything like that. I just want to raise some issues. I know that our new planning director had asked us to think a little bit about the new way that the information is being presented. And I appreciate the attempt to streamline. What I'm a little bit uncomfortable here on is that we've known, and again, this spring, we'll look for this back page, but I'll try to bring it back here. We've heard from outside consultants for years that we're choosing variances. And we've been told a number of times that if we're going to be giving so many variances, that we really need to address those things in the code and that they shouldn't be coming up as variances. So I want to say that as a general context. The way I read the staff report, that I understood what was happening in terms of the new presentation, is that I see that there's something at odds in the way the presentation occurred. On the one hand, you have the general criteria that was just presented by Dylan here, and I really appreciated that. And so we could talk about how the strict application code might deprive the applicant of the ability of the property to enjoy the rights of properties elsewhere, and I see that in this case. What I don't really see is that, but I guess that in reading the report, I do think there are other alternatives. Now, I don't think alternatives are a better way of going here, but I do think that there are alternatives. And there's another part of that report, and one that we've seen many times in the past, that says, and it says that in this report as well, that for variance to be approved, every one of these criteria must be true. And there are about 7 criteria. In this case, one of those criteria, there are no alternatives, and I actually don't believe that's true. So in this case, I'm willing, I think that given everything, I would be willing to support the variance. I don't love the fact that we have 2 parts of the code that are somewhat in opposition to one another. And I also don't love the way that we're privileging one of the aspects and not the other, as been the case in the past. So again, this is just for showing discussion that because our planning director has asked for us to think a little bit about the presentation. I want to bring that explicitly to the table because I saw it in all of the applications that we're considering tonight. And I do think that we might be getting in the position to, without much thought or without much foregrounding of consideration, in a position that we feel that we have to approve every variance because one of those general criteria might be true, and that we ignore the things that in other parts of the code must be true, if that makes sense. So again, I'm happy to support this given everything, but I did want to bring these two considerations.
I'm not sure I quite understand what the problem with a strict code and numerous variances is. Yeah, I mean, you said experts say that we're supposed to, and I don't understand that.
Well, it might be because we're new to the commission, but in the last 10 years, we've had many rewritings of the code. We've hired many people who come and give advice about how we apply the code. And we've been, in a way, deemed or taken to task a number of times because they view that we are, in their view, in some ways, I don't say it's like this, too casually giving variances. And they say, if you're going to be giving a lot of variances, then there's something wrong with your code. You need to then put that in. For example, in what I just outlined, where you have two parts of the code that are somewhat in conflict with one another, then if we're going to privilege the first reading, it says you don't have to be so rigorous on applying it in the first instance. And the second instance, it says every one of these must be found to be true to grant it. There's an opposition between those two in our code. And then so I'm saying I don't love being in a position of having to make a decision between those two. I would rather say this is a hint to us or an example that the code needs to be addressed so that the planning commissioners are not in the position in the way that I feel that I am and saying I'm doing something that is part of the code that's saying that I agree that this is true and I don't believe it is. If that makes sense.
More discussion? We have a motion and second, so that's in favor. Say aye. So that's unanimous. Next item is subdivision waiver 28202. Encroachment into no bill 118 Manitou Terrace, Roger Tuerke.
Thank you. To introduce myself, I'm Chelsea Stromberg, I'm the senior planner for the city of Manitou Springs. So again, for the record, Chelsea Stromberg, city of Manitou Springs, strength my department, representing subdivision waiver 2202 for 181 Manitou Terrace. The applicant, John Miller, on behalf of Roger Tuerke. The applicant requests a subdivision waiver to allow a retaining wall and driveway for proposed new construction residential structure to encroach in the no-build area, which is 30% impervious surface. This renewal modification of the previous, this is a renewal and modification of the previously granted subdivision waiver SW 1703, which was then addressed 0 Manitou Terrace, which has expired. Minor subdivision 1703 was approved in September 2017, which replatted the subject property into a single lot and created the no-build areas as shown on the site plan and provided the beautification. According to the city's subdivision regulations, the planning commission may approve waivers from the regulations only in cases where, due to exceptional topographical or other conditions peculiar to the site, and unnecessary hardship is placed on the subdivider. We have our site plan showing topography. Its staff assessment that the requested waiver meets the regulations. The extreme topography on the site necessitates the waiver as the notable portion of the site cannot be accessed without crossing slopes greater than 30%. Without the waiver, the site cannot be developed as indicated in the visual plan. This subdivision waiver request differs from the original request. However, the applicant stated that they would be content to comply with the original waiver restrictions if the commission found consent. The proposed residential structure does not encroach into the neighborhood area. However, approximately 1,454 square feet of the driveway and a portion of the retaining wall would encroach, which is larger than the original waiver, which is 1,140 square feet. By reorienting the driveway, the applicant states that the visual impact of the proposed retaining wall to adjacent neighbors will be reduced. Staff recommends granting subdivision waiver 2203 to 118 Anderson Terrace to allow for the encroachment into the identified no-build area with the following conditions. Number one, that the subdivision waiver is good for 1 year from the date of the approval, unless the building permit for construction of the property is obtained and remains valid through completion of the construction of the. Number two, the applicant will work with Massachusetts Fire Department on the wildfire mitigation site assessment. Number three, the applicant will complete a geologic hazards evaluation prior to any grading. Was motion upon the screen, if anyone so wish.
Any questions for staff members?
Chelsea, I was just wondering if there's input from the fire department. This is such a tight turnaround to get up that road, and there's a fire hydrant up here. But it's right up there in the fire issue.
Yes, and actually, fire department turnaround was addressed during the original subdivision waiver, and the fire hydrant was placed there as a result of that.
Any other questions? Okay, with the applicant, we can start the table, state your name and address.
Tree Week, 115 and 2 Terrace.
And I happen to be Todd Fleming with Planning Matters, 438 Prospect Street in Columbia Springs. I wasn't expecting to be here. We're waiting for John Wheeler to show up in a moment. I know he was last week was suffering from COVID and couldn't make the HBC public hearing. I'll sit in and answer as many questions as I possibly can. John is the designer of the house and is the designer of the ultimate driveway.
We need to,
Excuse me.
yeah, I've gotten feedback that it's real hard to hear.
Yes. Forgive me. I will answer as many of the driveway design questions as is possible. I did draft the project description and justification for this, but John Wheeler is the expert on the actual design. So, Roger would like to inform you, even if John can't make this public hearing. Again, he had come last week. I don't know this one.
Questions for you? Okay. Maria?
Did you get any feedback from the neighbors?
No, I didn't get any. We get closer. Tom here is here to support you, my closest neighbor.
You currently live at 115, so you live in the area.
I've lived there for 2 years.
earlier from the same commission. Roger Treewick installed the fire hydrant, which sits 40 or 50 feet below where the new house would be built. He did it with the city collaboration on the extension of the water line and the installation of the fire. So Roger's the one who did it, with city collaboration, with as a condition of the previous church house that was built about 7 years ago at 120 Maple Church. Got 120 to happen Avenue, just below this. Is that help?
I did see the fire hydrant. I'm
Yes.
concerned with the fire truck connection.
Yes, I sat in the jump seat of former fire engine number 1, and Larry Mitchell did 3 loops through the neighborhood. Clockwise loops up, down, on up Rogers driveway, and he has granted a public easement across his existing house driveway to get up to Manitou Terrace, down to Manitou Terrace, back cave, back to the space. So we did that 3 times to make sure this was in place.
There are no other questions, ma'am? Why don't you sit down for now? Open for public comment. Anybody in the audience would like to speak now? Time.
Good evening, Robert Todd, 20 Manitou Terrace. Just wanted to confirm what Roger referred to, which is the other nearest neighbors also on the slope of the bottom sides of the place. And my wife and I do support these rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else needing to speak, closing comment, discuss.
I think since we've already approved it.
You mean we approved the previous? It's a slightly different configuration, but it sounds to me like it'll actually be a more appropriate configuration for the neighborhood.
Also like it, and think it's a good plan. Again, just in terms of process, so this has nothing to do with applicant proposal. In terms of the process, one thing I would say is it is true there's 2 things. One is that we did approve something earlier, but again, I don't want to be bound by that. There have been, I think, in the past, bad decisions that have been made, and I don't want us to be in a position that we have to go along with something that was previously done that ran the clock down, and then they come back and we're supposed to do it. That part I respect the spirit of what you're saying in that case. But I still think that the proposal is a good one. I do want to again speak to the planning directors about the presentation, because I worry, again, I'm echoing myself, that it's hard not being a broken record, but I think that the way the presentation works is almost that there's an expectation of preempting of approval rather than a careful deliberation about if there are going to be the variances, what are the pluses and minuses and the different considerations that we're asked to do. Honestly, I haven't been in a meeting in my 15 years that we don't really discuss those in great detail. I don't think that means that every single word has to be read into the record. That's sometimes onerous and cumbersome and takes a lot of time. But I would be worried if it feels as if the planning department is mainly an I'm not saying this is how they see themselves, but I would be worried about the perception of a planning department that seems to think mainly about something an advocate for a proposal rather than presenting the information for us to exercise our due diligence in considering the different pluses and minuses of the stipulations of the code. I'm sorry to sound cranky here, but again, since you were asking for that information, I'm worried a little bit about what might be a procedural precedent that we're setting here. And I think it could have some negative consequences down the line. But I'm in agreement with this.
Yeah, I did say, you know, this particular item, the subdivision waiver, is slightly different from the variance. And one of my concerns over the years, the subdivision waivers is that there aren't specific criteria. And that's the area that maybe somehow come up with some more concrete items like we do have for variances. Because if you read the code, it's just, it says sometimes you need to do this. It's very mushy. And I'd like to tighten that up. So I agree with you.
And in the past, we have had those larger and more and fuller discussions about the use of.
Any other comments?
I can make a motion. To approve subdivision waiver 2202, versions 118, Vantage Terrace. Staff's 3 recommendations. I'll second.
Motion second, more discussion. All in favor? It's unanimous. So it's approved. Okay, the next item is major conditional use 2202, wireless service facility on a non-eligible facility, 125 Higginbotham Road, Kagan Mankiewicz applicant.
Hi there. So at this facility, we're requesting a Dish Wireless to put up a cell site. Dish Wireless is interested in this site due to the high vantage point that it has, being able to cover a majority of Manitou Springs with one site. They're also currently.
So this is staff's opportunity to do a presentation, and then we will open it up to the applicant. I apologize for that confusion. I apologize for the confusion, but thank you, commissioners. For the record, Kelsey Lanham, planning technician for the planning department. This presentation is for MACP 2202 major conditional use permit at 125 Higginbotham Road Wireless Service Facility, Dish Wireless. The applicant is Katie Mankiewicz, and she is on behalf of the owner. So this property is zoned commercial and is not located within a historic district. Currently, the property has 2 existing wireless communication facilities, Verizon and T-Mobile. This proposal is for the addition of another wireless communication facility co-located on the same roof as the others. This aerial photo shows the location of the site. The proposed antennas is on the most southeastern building. It's known as Building H. And the red star depicts where the proposed antennas for Dish Wireless will be located. And this site plan shows where the existing carrier or antennas are located. So they're located on the south corner of Building H. Also, this site plan shows where the proposed screen wall and the antennas will be for Dish Wireless antennas. And so they will be mounted on the east building, building H. So these next three slides, the first one of the three, these renderings show what the proposed screen wall will look like when viewing building H from the south. The proposed antennas will be screened by a parapet wall that will be designed to match the facade of the existing building. And these photos show what the proposed screen wall will look like when viewing from further south. And it's the taller, yes, right where the mouse is. And this final photo shows what the proposed screen wall will look like from the northeastern part of building H. So staff did receive one comment from a surrounding neighbor expressing their concern for the facility and how it will affect Manitou Springs and its citizens after they did receive the public mailing notification. This comment did come in too late to be published with the packet or have a physical copy printed out. Katie Makowitz, the applicant, responded and expressed that this proposed new facility will provide Manitou Springs and its residents with dish network, like those that are already being provided with the current wireless service facilities that are co-located on the property. Ms. Makowitz stated in the response that the proposed dish wireless facility will meet all FCC guidelines and will run on FCC regulated frequencies. So staff recommends approval of MACUP 2202 with the following condition. One, the facility shall be maintained in compliance with the standards contained in the International Building Codes and National Electric Code as applicable and adopted by the city from time to time. The owner of a wireless facility shall ensure ongoing compliance, operation, and maintenance consistent with the city's approval, including but not limited to the upkeep of site landscaping, painting and service treatment, litter removal, fence or screening repair, and general maintenance to assure a clean and well-kept wireless facility.
This is the stamp.
As the major police permit, are we not allowed to actually vote on I recommend approval of the city council?
We recommend approval of council, so it's kind of house and approve.
Okay, the language is confusing, I want to make sure.
I'm just curious, is this replacing a direct facility?
No, so this is just going to be another addition. So there's T-Mobile and Verizon currently, and so this service facility will be for Dish. So it'll just be an addition.
Any questions? Okay. The applicant is remote, is that correct?
Correct. She is on Zoom. Katie, would you like to comment at this time?
Can we bring up her video or she's?
Hi there. I can turn on my camera if
Yeah, that would be good.
that's preferred.
Yes.
Hold on one second. I'm not sure if there's a way for me to turn on my camera. I can't see the camera button. but I'm sorry, it's kind of fuzzy over here. Did you have a specific question or do you want me to just kind of run through the project?
Yeah, why don't you run through it? And,
Okay.
start with your name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, my name is Katie Makowitz and the address is for 125 Higginbotham Road. Dish address of my company.
No, where you live.
15042 Prairie Place, Broomfield, Colorado.
Thank you.
So this wireless facility is, Dish Wireless is currently building out a cellular network similarly to AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. Their interest in this site is due to its vantage point over Manitou Springs, meaning that they can have one site that covers a majority of Manitou Springs, as well as the fact that there are multiple carriers here. So there's not multiple cell sites around Manitou Springs. It's just one site with multiple carriers on it. This site will provide wireless service for Dish Wireless as well as internet services throughout Manitou Springs. As mentioned, the antennas will be screened behind FRP material, which is reinforced plastic that allows radio frequencies to travel through it. This can be designed to look like the building, so there aren't, the antennas won't be visible from the outside of the facility. Our equipment will be within a storage unit, so it won't be able to be seen from the outside of the facility. And this is basically just a way for the residents of Manitou Springs, as well as visitors and people traveling through who have Dish Wireless, to have wireless coverage for that network.
Is that all you got to say?
If Ken, if you want to also speak to this, my coworker Ken is also online. He may have lost internet connection though, so hold on.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hi, Ken. Yeah, you can continue.
Yep. So just that's pretty much our proposal. Great job,
Okay,
Katie.
excuse me, could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Kenneth Trujillo. I'm a project manager at Wyco Field Services. My home address is 1659 South Dudley Court in Lakewood, Colorado. And you know, just to build on what Katie did, we really can cover all of Manitou Springs with this new network set up by Dish, which is going to be the next wireless carrier, just like T-Mobile, Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T. We're a Colorado Dish Network, as well as Wyco Field Services, are a Colorado company, and we'd like to provide wireless service to fellow Coloradans.
Yeah. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, so thank you. Just hang on. If you have more questions, we'll bring it back. And we'll do public comment. Would anybody in the audience like to comment on this? So no interest. I'll close a public comment here and we can discuss. So, I read through this. It sounds like they're meeting all the requirements. It's pretty prescribed that for wireless, what we can and cannot allow. And it seems like they are in compliance.
for benefit. Or no.
This one condition.
So I'll make a motion to make a conditional use for 2, or the storage facility on 9 mobile facility within 5 feet of the road. With 1 staff. Right here. Condition. 1 second.
Recommendation, the motion to. Nature. Conditional use for recommendation to.
We're
recommending. Any more discussion? Okay. That was unanimous. And this will go on to city council. Next item is minor subdivision 2203, variance 2204, variance 2205, and variance 2206. The minor subdivision and variances for rear yard setback 7.5 feet where 15 is required. Lot size 3,007 square feet where 4,400 square feet is required. And lot frontage 34 feet where 45 feet is required. 121 Pawnee Avenue, 123 Pawnee, and 126 Deerpath Avenue. Don't see the name of the applicant. Camille and Roger with applicants.
Thank you. And for the record, this is Chelsea Stromberg. And please bear with me, these applications are so intertwined, it seems more reasonable to combine one staff report and one presentation rather than 4 separate reiterating ourselves a lot. So I'm going to do my best, but please feel free to ask all the questions because I know this is definitely a complicated request. The applicant requested a minor subdivision to create 3 lots with a common access easement to resolve existing building and ownership encroachments on Pawnee Avenue. The applicant is proposing to re-subdivide these 3 lots in minor subdivision 2203 to make the lots more livable and usable. And the new configuration requires 3 variances. Variance 2204. 126 Deerpath Avenue requires a variance from the minimum rear yard setback to allow 7.5 feet where 15 feet is required. Variance 2205 at 121 Pawnee Avenue requires a variance from the minimum lot size to build a single family home on a 3,007 square foot lot in the general residential district where 4,400 square feet is required. Variance 2206 at 121 Pawnee Avenue requires a variance from the minimum lot frontage build a single family home on a lot where with a frontage of 34 feet or 45 feet is required. Here we have a color site plan on the site. This is the site as a whole. I'm going to spend most of my time on this site slide, which shows really all 3 variances. So again, this is the 3 lots involved in minor subdivision. The lot in yellow, the lot tan, and the lot in green. The lot in green is 121 Pawnee Avenue, and the lot in yellow is 126 Deerpath Avenue.
Which one's green?
121. 121 Pawnee Avenue.
The top left.
Oh, sorry, that doesn't.
No, that one. Okay. That's great.
We also have it over here. The replat will reconfigure the lots associated with these three addresses. All properties are under the same ownership. However, the garage that aesthetically matches 126 Deer Path Avenue is on the lot associated with 123 County Avenue. This action will redraw the lot lines to reassociate the garage with 126 Deer Path. The new lot lines will also allow more square footage for 121 County Avenue, which is currently unknowable due to its size. 121 County Avenue is smaller than average and previously contained a modest residence, which was damaged in a fire and demolished. The applicant intends to enlarge this lot to rebuild the residence and allow for 2 on-street parking spaces. The new lot will require 2 variances for lot size and lot frontage, neither of which will meet current zoning code requirements. 126 Deer Path Avenue requires variance to allow the new rear lot line to be drawn closer to the detached garage that will be allowed under the current zoning code. The reason for the shorter rear setback is to allow space for the 2 parking spaces on 121 Farm, while still drawing the lot line in a way that allows 126 Deer Path Avenue to maintain ownership of the detached garage. This shape here represents the garage. This line is the rear yard, with the 7.5 rear yard setback. Here you can see 2 parking spaces that fit back there that are accessed by this common access easement for this proposed or future proposed. Excuse me, also, it was brought to staff's attention that the public notice advertised the new lot size of 121 Farm as 3,175 square feet, not 3,007 square feet as the request states. All information pertaining to the date and time of the hearing was correct on those advertisements. Staff was in receipt of 1 email indicating opposition to the proposal with concerns regarding the size of the home that could be built on 121 Pawnee Avenue should the variance be approved, as well as concerns over views for air, drainage, and noise. It is staff's judgment. We do have review criteria for the subdivision application that's found in City Code Section 16-10-070. It's staff's judgment that the subject application is in compliance with the review criteria because it allows the site to maintain the same density that it supported prior to the destruction of dwelling unit at 121 County Avenue, which was approximately 7 dwelling units per acre, which is 5 units on a 0.77 acre lot. With 10 dwelling units per acre is allowed in the general residential zone district. It also allows 121 County Avenue to comply with the minimum parking standards required of a single family residence of 2 off-street parking spaces. These properties were originally platted when the city required, prior to the city required dedication for land for parks, open space, and schools, or payment of fees awarded. There are no schools, parks, or open space planned or feasible in this area. Therefore, staff recommends a collection fee for dedication as shown in the chart on the staff report. These fees total $2,290. It's been the city's practice to exclude fees only for existing dwellings when no additional density is proposed. Therefore, staff has noted that fees with and without dwellings and the total fee included is without dwellings. Variance criteria are listed and analyzed in the staff report. Staff finds that there is sufficient justification that each variance meets all of the criteria. However, I'd be happy to elaborate on this criteria during this presentation should be in the commission requests. This proposal proposed plat essentially cleans up the existing conditions, which puts the existing development on its own properties and documents easements which will help define the area. Therefore, based on the criteria for approval of minor subdivisions set forth in the subdivision code, staff recommends granting MNS 2203 to create lots 1, 2, and 3 of the County Road Plus subdivision with the following conditions of approval. Number 1, prior to filing, the plat shall be updated to include the following. A, legal descriptions of lots 1 through 3. B, the grades of County Avenue and Deer Path Avenue. C, the name of the subdivision if County Road plat is not named in the deed. Number 2, the grades of County Avenue and Deer Path Avenue along the property frontages shall be added to the subdivision site plan and provided for the planning department file. Number 3, the property owner shall be feasible of awarding dedication of parks for the spaces schools in the total amount of $2,295 before the mountain table and staff report. Number 4, the surveyor has 90 days from the date of approval to provide all required information, corrections, and additions, allow time for city review, and submit the final Mylar for filing or the sort of approval will expire. Number 5, the surveyor shall provide CAD drawings of the final approved plat at the time of submission of the final Mylar for filing as, to allow the city to update its GIS data. Based on the above evaluations, staff recommends approval. Staff recommends approval of variance 2204, 2205, 2206, which is Deer Path Avenue, which is Avenue, with the finding that the submission justification has been provided for the criteria that's required and under the following conditions. That number 1, a rear yard setback is not less than 7.5 feet from the rear property line shall be provided. This approval is for the building configuration as shown and does not allow for additional encroachment into the rear yard setback without further variance. This concludes my presentation.
Questions, Stan? Is this driveway location new? I guess, is it taking away parking off County Avenue?
So there's an access easement that's currently used as an easement, but it's not a documented access easement for other properties. These 2 new parking spaces will be providing additional parking for what is currently provided.
I understand that. I meant public parking on front of that.
This is not a public parking.
Great.
Chelsea, just help me get clear on which variance impacts which property. Could you just go through that one more time?
Absolutely. Variance 2204 is for 126 Deer Path Avenue, and that's for the rear yard setback. The other 2 variances, variance 2205 and 2206, are 121 Pawnee Avenue, which address the minimum lot size and the minimum lot.
We'll probably get into this in a little bit, but just as a point of information, if they had 2 lots rather than 3, and the green and the yellow one up there were 1 lot, and then there was a lot below that, would there be a request of a requirement for variances?
Not to my knowledge.
The variances are dependent on having 3 lots rather than 2.
Right, which did exist prior to the destruction of the.
Right, but that's okay, thank you.
See, now, the proposed house for 121 Bonnie, is it the same footprint as the house that was described?
To my knowledge, there's a current application for a home on 121 County Avenue. The applicant stated that a future proposed residence.
Because the applicant on the write-up did show the dimensions of the house on that property. I guess that was just a suggested house,
We might clarify with the applicant.
okay? And just to clarify, right now, there is no documented access easement for instead specifically access to the deer path property, which has no access to the deer path.
The Deer Path property does have access on the Deer Path. The access easement is primarily for 121 County Avenue and 123 County Avenue.
The garage is not accessible from deer path. I guess that's the applicant.
Sorry, I was thinking about the property. Yes, you are correct, that the garage itself is accessible through access.
So if that's going to be part of the deer path property, then there will need to be some kind of access easement.
Yes, that it, excuse me, I didn't see. So, yes, that access easement does reach to that property.
Other questions? Okay, the applicant. State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good evening. Again, I'm Todd Lennon with Planning Matters, 438 North Prospect Street, Colorado Springs, 80903. And I'm here with Camille Young and Roger Young, who's sitting back. And he'll go forward if he has relevant information for commissioners. We're going to respect, I would like to have very, very short presentation and then allow Camille to provide some of the background information that I think will address a few of your questions, a few of your good access kinds of questions, and focus on the small one, the tight. So the hour is getting late, so I'll summarize my comments so Camille can speak directly to you. This is a very complex site. If you look at that, LWA's preliminary plat is almost a little bit scary. So consequently, at my recommendation, Roger and Camille need a graphic artist. If you put the site plan back on the screen. Being a graphic artist, they involve your work to create that simplified site plan. Which actually does have grade on this version, just to make it understandable. No complaint to the surveyor, but there's so much going on, so much that needs to be cleaned up. That's what we're trying to do. Just clean it up, make it a little bit more logical, like it. And we appreciated Chelsea's response to the written simplified template. She was requesting something like that, and it was all working. So, okay. We concur with the staff report and the conditions of approval. With the understanding that there is a slight discrepancy between the survey size of lot 121. The LWA has it at 1,150 square feet. I believe that. I think that's the reason why we're here, is to get a surveyor on this property to make sure thing like this. I think there are other documentation which suggested that the lot is a tiny bit larger. And to address the chairman's question earlier, Kevin O'Leary recommended, and I thought it was a good idea, to put a possible footprint on the on the site plan, the preliminary plan. And we also reflected that similar footprint, 22 by 36, almost 800 square foot. With the front porch, it would be a little more than an 800 square foot. So someone could actually get a FHA mortgage for a new house like that in that configuration. And that house we have no setback variance requests. That's why we wanted to show a perspective footprint of a small house in that location. That's all I have to say, except if there happen to be some neighbors remotely who have questions or comments, I would respectfully request, depending on any other public testimony here after us, the respectful request to comment specifically and directly to the neighbors. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Camille Young. I live at 126 Deer Path Avenue in Manitou Springs. I appreciate you guys being out here tonight, and hopefully I can kind of help clarify kind of some background and what we're trying to do. So me and my husband Roger purchased 126 Deer Path and 123 Pawnee in June of 2019 as one contract. With that contract, it was 4 parcels as the lot description, and those 4 parcels were exactly the same on each property. When you look at the LLCs, one of the parcel lines actually goes through the large garage, which is up against the 121 lot. I do have a graphic here, if everybody's more visual, and you can kind of see here, right here is where the line's going through that garage. So when we purchased that property, we also, the 123 is a triplex. So we were trying to finance that as a rental unit as well as get it in an LLC. And because of this parcel going through the garage, we were unable to do either of those things. So we just left it the same. In October 2021, we did purchase 121 Pawnee after the lot was cleared from the previous residents. The previous resident had a house that was roughly 900 square feet on the property. It was 2 stories, so I'm guessing the lower story is around 400 square feet. The east and south side of her house actually was right on our property line. And I believe it was probably also too close as far as the current setbacks to the property just north of it at 119, I believe, Pawnee. So our intention was to try to, at some point, rebuild a house that was, previously there. So I did meet with Dylan, and at the time Michelle was the planning director, and she had a couple of requests for me. She said that the planning department wished or hoped that we could go ahead and rebuild that property, but they did want the lot to be larger. They did understand that it would never meet the 4,400 square feet. But when we purchased it, the contract said it was 1,350 square feet. The surveyor saying it's more like 1,100 and some change. They also requested we provide 2 off-street parking spaces for this lot. The previous owner had no parking. She had to park on Pawnee. So we have a concrete pad that existed between our large garage and the 121 lot that we are including with the lot to make it larger and include those 2 parking spaces. The other request was that they wanted us to clean up the lines because they understood that they were going through buildings. And it was something that was done many years ago and never fixed by the previous owners once construction was done. I assume the codes were different back then. So our goal is basically to try and make 123 and 123 Pawnee and 126 Deer Path function independently, so that we can finance, we can put in LLCs, their own properties. We also wish to make the lot at 121 larger and more buildable. Based on the current size, the rough estimate of a property that could be built there without enlarging it is about 300 square feet. So most likely it would be a multi-story house, I would assume more hard to build. Nobody really wants to build 300 square feet, I'm guessing. So they would have to probably build up or ask for setback variances. Improving or enlarging the lot would allow, like he said, the 800 square foot house with no setback variances. So, unfortunately, there's no way around the frontage and the size. We are improving it. We did make it larger. So we went from 23 feet on the frontage to 34. And again, went from maybe 11 to 1,300 square feet up to about 3,000 square feet. So, we have improved those two variances we're requesting. We've made it as close to the requirements as we could with the land we had available, and also adding that parking space. The only way to add the parking space is to not follow the setback variance on 126 Deer Path, because the space between the garage and the concrete is only 7.5 feet. So if we did follow the setback variance and made it 15 feet, it would be in the middle of that concrete pad, which would only allow one parking space for that lot. The answer to your question, the driveway is not new. There has always been a driveway. We're not adding anything to this property at this point until we figure out, if we can make it a lot bigger, and then we'll work on house points. There is no access to the house on Deer Path. The Deer Path house has to be accessed through that driveway, which is 23 Pony, for the garage and the house driveway. There's a retaining wall and so everything is accessed through one driveway. It's always how it's been since I purchased it, and I believe from the years from the previous owner as well. Because they did also own all the properties at one point. I believe their daughter purchased 121 Pawnee and lived there, and then we purchased the other two from the previous owners. So hopefully that wasn't too complicated, and hopefully that kind of gives you a little background of why we are here requesting these things. Try to just make everything hopefully a little more functional and a little better fit with what's currently going on the property. Thank you.
This is. So right now, the access to the Deer Path property is just.
It's the same driveway, so
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm thinking about the legal, like, it looks to me like if this subdivision happens, the only access to the Deer Path property would be through an easement.
correct.
And that's what I'm trying to understand is how do we formalize that easement? Because you may not always own all three properties.
Correct. So currently, the line to get into Deer Path, the driveway hasn't moved much. Mainly, we connected the large garage with Deer Path, which originally was with Pawnee. I spoke to the lawyer that I worked with, and she told me that we're not allowed to give yourself an easement. So if we sell the property, part of the plan is to write the easement as part of that sale contract. But I was told by her that you can't write yourself an easement. So I don't know. I can certainly contact another lawyer and see if that's the same opinion. But when I contacted her, that was the answer I got. So when it sells, it will be part of that contract.
I can chime in real quick. Can you guys hear me?
Who is this?
Sorry, this is Austin, one of the attorneys.
Okay.
City attorney.
Sure.
Sorry. So that's correct. So easements have to be adverse to the property owner. So you couldn't have an easement deeding part of the parcel access back to yourself. You would have to do it in an adverse way. So it would have to be like a utility granting an easement or some sort of third party granting that easement. So just chiming in on that easement question, and happy to answer any other questions related to that.
Great, thank you. So basically, the access to 121 is from that shared driveway as well.
Correct.
So at this time, are you planning on developing that property or selling it?
Honestly, I am having to move this weekend from Manitou. I've been here and I'm kind of sad to leave. My father's having some health issues, so I am having to leave, so most likely I will be selling at some point, but not in the near future. If this subdivision happens, I plan on keeping the 123 Pawnee apartments as well as the 121 Pawnee lot, but we will be selling possibly the 126 Deer Path. Thank you.
Is that currently for sale? It looks like there's a for sale sign on the property.
If there is a coming soon, basically if it doesn't divide, I can't sell it by itself. So if it doesn't divide, I will have to sell it like I purchased it as a combo with the 123 Pawnee triplex. So that's why it's coming soon, depending on this decision. It will be either the Deer Path house if it is subdivided, or the Deer Path and Pawnee triplex as one unit, just like I purchased it. And then the next owner would have to buy both at the same time like I did.
Any questions?
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on this? So no takers, I'll close the public comment. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think.
For the record, Hannah Van Lindbergh, planning director. Online, I can see two individuals, and that is the previous applications, applicants, and someone named Joy Porter. They are able to speak if they were to unmute themselves.
Seeing no hands raised, I'm pretty sure that Joy Porter might be. So I guess we'll close the public comment, and I guess the struggle I have with this is what's going to happen with 121. You know, we're creating a substandard lot, and it's clear that it can, something could be developed on it that adheres to the setbacks. My concern is that someone's going to buy it and say, well, you gave me this, I have this legally platted lot, and oh my God, I can't do anything unless I got a whole bunch of more setbacks and a whole bunch more variances. You know, I want it to be taller because you made me have this tiny little lot, or I want to have a 2-foot setback rather, and I don't want to provide parking. I want to park there. So I guess my question would be, is there any way to tie the setbacks? You know, I don't understand anything of that would allow us to do that. All that saying. Well, to, you know, basically to say,
Stick a fork in it.
you know, there's a condition, condition of granting the variance is that there will be no additional setback variances or height variances on the property or parking variances. Yeah, I mean, that's one concern. The other thing is, like, I think there was a false assertion in some of the narrative that there's no other way to rebuild it. And I believe non-conforming structures can be rebuilt to the existing footprint. So that would have been an alternative. Understand the code.
Chair Delich, we do have a raised hand from our city attorney, Austin.
Yes, chime in.
So if I can chime in really quickly, this is Austin again. As far as the condition that you just mentioned, we wouldn't be able to write a condition to that effect that limits a future property owner to seek some sort of procedural variance or what have you under the code. And so you could limit this variance in whatever way you see fit, or this application, I mean, whatever way you see fit, but you couldn't condition it on a future property owner not being able to use any of the procedural tools in the code.
Is there a time limit in which one would have the right, either a time limit or change in ownership hands, in which one would have the right to rebuild according to what the footprint was there before? For example, does it have to be the person who owns the property? Does that person still have to own it and have to rebuild it, or is there a 5-year? So I'm asking you questions about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Reagan. Let me look at the code to see if the legal nonconformity expires after a certain period of time of a structure being taken down. So we look at that.
It's 1842. And also the issue about changing hands.
It was exactly 1842, right? Because like you read that section before. So again, for the record, Hannah Van by the State Planning Department. So that section, which is titled non-conforming structures, does not specifically list a time limit of non-conformity, or does it say that the non-conformity leaves if the property changes hands?
Thank you. And I wonder if our city attorney might weigh on that, because I have a hard time believing, for example, if I buy a property and a structure was there that was destroyed in 1930, that I would have the right to build the same footprint next time. So I have a hard time thinking that is okay, but I don't really understand the progress. Maybe our attorney will weigh on the issue.
Hannah, do you mind repeating the question? Actually, I'm hearing you just fine, but I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing the commissioner.
Yes, so the question is, if a legal non-conforming structure were to burn down or be destroyed, is there a time limit in which that structure can maintain that legal non-conformity and must be constructed? And if that property were to change hands, that also affects the legal non-conformity?
Typically it does. I would need to double check the code section, and it sounds like Hannah might have it up. And so Hannah, if you know the answer off the top of your head, then please interrupt me. But typically the code will state that the nonconformity ceases to exist once it's destroyed, even if it's from some sort of natural disaster. That's typical, but I would have to double check on the Manitou Springs code. Hannah, do you know if the code has a provision like that in the case of destruction, that it would have to be rebuilt to code, current code standards, and no longer has that legal non-conforming status?
I'm looking at the entire section now, and I don't see anything that says that the legal non-conformity lapses after a certain period of time or after total destruction.
I guess one of the questions would be just to say anything about the trend, not in terms of lapsing, but being protected. The part of the issue, there has to be some kind of limit, because otherwise we would have people going through Manitou doing research about things, structures that were destroyed in previous centuries and decades, buying property and saying, I have the right to build this non-conforming structure. Then there has to be some kind of limit. Otherwise it would be okay.
Typically there is, but I would need to double check the code. It sounds like from what Hannah's saying that there's no explicit limit in the code, which could be something that we look at through a text amendment. But typically you would have a limit stating that if the structure is destroyed for any reason, that the nonconformity no longer exists. And so that's the lapse, but you wouldn't have a provision in there typically, and I would advise against one that says the nonconformity only exists for 10 years or what have you, and then it becomes an illegal nonconformity. You couldn't have that automatic trigger. It would have to be some sort of circumstance or event that destroys the nonconformity.
I think the question is, I mean, it's pretty explicit. The code says the damaged structure may be rebuilt to the previous dimensions with no expansion. And there's no time limit there. So you're saying that there's no time limit unless we explicitly say for a damaged structure. So that would
Yep,
be
that's correct.
possibly something we need to add to the code update, is to have some kind of a sunsetting of a damaged structure.
Correct.
So while we're discussing this, I guess the issue in for me, because this is the crux, and that's why I asked about the, whether it's possible to keep the properties together and not have a variance at the very beginning. That if there's no, if legally, I find it just unfathomable, but if legally anybody can buy a property and rebuild a non-conforming structure, and we don't have anything to prevent that right now, okay. But in this situation, we're being asked to create something that is requiring variances to allow that to happen. That's not the same direction of logic. You know, if you were saying, I'm keeping the property as it was and I would like to rebuild it, that's one thing. But to create separate properties and say, but then we require 3 variances, that's a different kettle of fish. And that's where our purview comes into play. And so, you know, I understand the desirability of the petition, but I'm having a hard time, as the chair said, creating a substandard plot that would be creating the problems that I see there.
So by approving these variances, it's not a nonconformity. What you're saying, a variance is different in a nonconformity, and that at one point that nonconformity was conforming, and they didn't go through an approval process to get a nonconforming status. It was just that the code changed on them, and they just automatically became nonconforming through that. So this is different, and that you're actually giving a specific property right through a variance that runs with the land. So it does not expire. Variances run with the land. Unless specifically stated otherwise, and you have to be really particular about how to do so.
I think the point that Tim was making was that if we approve this minor subdivision, we are creating a non-conforming lot.
Right. The
minimum lot size.
So that's right in the term of art sense, but in the legal term, it still won't be a nonconformity. It is not conforming to the code, but it's not a legal nonconformity. It has the same privileges as any other lot that does meet the town code specifications if you grant the approval, because you are the ones that granted it, because it's granted by the reviewing body. It's not an automatic change in the law that made the property situate differently. So because you are approving it, it runs with the land, so it has a much higher legal privilege than a non-conforming status would.
That's exactly how I would read it, Austin, thank you, and that's what gives me pause.
Other thoughts or comments? The applicant, you had something you wanted to say, let's come back and start. It's redundant, but state your name and address for record.
My name is Camille Young, 126 Deer Path Avenue in Manatee. Appreciate you giving me a second to kind of clarify. So the lot exists already. So if I did sell it as is, you would still have to grant a size and frontage variance for anybody to build on it. I'm making it less more compliant or closer to what it should be. Also, the size of the lot probably would, the person who was building it would probably start asking for setback variances because the house would only be 300 square feet as far as the footprint, where if we make the lot bigger, an 800 square foot house could be built with no setback variances needing to be made. Obviously they could apply, but you know, it wouldn't be necessary if the house could be 800 square feet maybe versus 300. Like I said, the lot exists, so those frontage and size variants, if it's ever rebuilt, will have to be done. If we don't make it bigger now, I don't know that it could happen if we sold the other properties unless the new owner wanted to donate land to the lot. So we're trying to do it now before we do anything so that it can happen. And so the person who buys that lot hopefully can build a house without asking for any other setbacks. And the two variances we're asking for, unfortunately, are always going to exist with this lot. There is no way to comply with size and frontage. If we did try to give it enough frontage, we would have to take it away from the 123 Connie and ask for a variance on frontage for that lot. So unfortunately, it's one or the other. And the size, I don't know that you could ever make it 4,400 square feet. So I guess that's why we're trying to make it a little more buildable. Hopefully it won't require any setback variances beside the, you know, the frontage and side variance. So I guess that's kind of what our goal is to make it a easier build for whoever does buy it and maybe not have to get setback variances.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, you know, there is an interesting point there that it is a legal lot now. And someone can build something on it. Even, you know, tiny houses. So
I think that's also very compelling. And I like that argument. I understand the trade-offs that are being made. And to try to make this lot is already exist, but it's to improve it. I understand.
Is that a motion? If I recall that a lot of these 13 square feet, which by management standards, you know, considered setbacks in that building and zone. And I appreciate the effort to make it larger and buildable, but it's, to me, it's more of a want versus a need. Tip me around the point that variances are extreme, and we're to approve 2 variances to try to squeeze in a house, basically a tiny little lot. That's why we have frontage regulations and setbacks. So I think this is trying to put the round peg in the square hole.
So, some clarification maybe. Since it's an existing platted lot, someone could build something tiny enough to meet the setbacks. Would that, I mean, would they still need this, you know, lot frontage variance since it's an existing lot? My understanding was it exists, so that's no longer a question. It's an unfortunate situation that it doesn't have the allowed frontage. That's how it was done, I don't know how many decades ago.
Thank you, Chair Delwich. So with an existing legally platted at the time it was platted, whole lot, and somebody wanted to construct on that and they were able to find a building footprint that fit perfectly within that, the inherent construction of that lot would not trigger a lot size or lot frontage variance because it would have already been given the right to be constructed on. Now, if they were wanting to expand it to a setback, that would be different, or in this particular case, wanting to replat, that is different. But since it's legally platted locked down, it already has the right to be constructed on.
So.
I'm just trying, I think that, yeah, you go back, you bought a lot. And the lot was a certain size. Need to add waivers to make it essentially more saleable, is what we were talking about. I know that's why variances.
So, anybody entertain a motion?
I'll entertain a motion and see what the second. I move, approval of, minor subdivisions 2203, variance 2204, variance 2205, variance 2206. Minor subdivision variances related to setback. 7 happy for 15 feet is required, lot size 3,750 square feet for 4,400 square feet is required. And lot frontage 34 feet for 45 feet. Staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any more discussion? If there's no discussion, let's vote. All those in favor, raise it, say aye, raise it. Those opposed? So, motion, this request fails. So next item is communications from the planning director.
Thank you, Chair Village. So I wanted to take an opportunity to voice a couple of updates and do a formal introduction to our newest staff member, which is Chelsea Stromberg. She's joining us as a senior planner and has been with the planning department for about a month now. And so far, she's done an excellent job hopping right into all the development review applications that have been going through our department. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. So other updates.
Well, sorry, can I just interrupt a bit? I forgot one thing. And since this motion, these requests were denied, there is a right to appeal to city council. Is that a 10-day? I think it's a 10-day window. Planning staff can help. We wish to do that.
So a quick update on the process of the zoning code update. I think some very valuable feedback was voiced tonight, and I sincerely appreciate that. So the zoning code update right now, we have received draft chapters and they're in staff review currently. We are making sure that the language that was produced by our consultant matches what has been talked about by our code committee in the past year or so. And then we'll present it to the code committee, make sure that it is ready for public review, and then we will post it for public review. And about in that time frame, I'll be presenting those items in front of planning commission as an informational update. And then a following meeting would be the planning commission's formal review and recommendation. Also the other item I wanted to talk about was we did make a couple of changes to the staff reports as well as to how our presentations have been flowing. So I wanted to make sure the commission had opportunity to let me know if that was not working or if you missed something about the old format and, or if you preferred something or wanted to change something, to let me know so I can make sure it works better next time.
You know, I like a more streamlined approach, but I think on things like the variances, it might be more useful to, at least for each of the criteria, and at least have a sentence or two explaining why it's and how it's being met. And it sort of articulated some of that. I think we have had times in the past where we spend too much time reading an entire staff report, and that can be very tedious and cumbersome, and people start nodding off. So I like, there's some balance, I think, where a more streamlined presentation is useful.
Maybe out. I would just like to follow up something that Tim had said, and I agree with. I think you guys are doing a good job with the new format, but I think that the part where you're saying, "Here's your motion," feels leading. So I would eliminate that. I know you're trying to be helpful, but it feels like you're leading the process. That's comfortable.
I like personally. With my children about trying to be honest, I try to follow the reading report and you guys summarize it. School and back to the way. Try to follow big report during your reader's digest. I like to be
I would agree with Mike, it's taking me a little while to just do the summary here and I'm just following along. So that's just a matter of getting familiar. I think there are times when there's richness or something important in the body of the report. And we can always refer to how to do this.
I wasn't going to say anything, but maybe I agree. I do generally like the direction because we have been here for hours reading word for word. So yes, I think that's a really good thing. The leading part, I agree with Carrie, and I think that part of it might be that rather than when I have a student write a paper, I now say, I don't want you to, in the first paragraph, like say what your whole argument is, and then lead the whole way through. I'd rather you set out a research question and you talk about the complex views of that question throughout the paper, and then you will come to some judgment at the end. That's a very different kind of process. And so I think there's value to, in the staff report, to highlight for us issues that are difficult or thorny, or where there could be opposition. That this is, in this criteria, we could see how this might be blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, in looking at these other different things, we think more or less like this. You see what I mean? To point out those kinds of things. Otherwise, it does seem a little leading that, well, we just told you why it's all great, and here's the recommendation. So,
Great, I do sincerely appreciate you guys letting me know what is working and what isn't working. It's never our intention to be leading, so thank you for letting me know that it's coming off that way so that we can adjust it for next time. And yeah, we can absolutely highlight those sticking points and the reasons that we came to the conclusions through working through the review process and things like that. It was one of the intents was to make things a little more concise, to reduce the amount of work that I know it takes to be a commissioner. I mean, this is a time-consuming process, so if there is more desire to have more information, highlight the sticking points, you can absolutely do that.
I think we're definitely going in the right direction.
Back in the last, this was invaluable. For sure, I would have been lost. So maybe, do something that's going to process systems.
That's a good point. Yeah, we can absolutely do that. Those plat documents do get really very involved in line, showing all the different pieces of information we need to show. So yeah, we can request that with future submittals and include it in the packet.
I agree that with the improvements on the root line. But just put. Can't any decision be spread? Yes. Any denial, approval, approval.
Yeah, but generally, you know, sometimes it's good just to remind people to pay. Generally, you know, there's a whole group of folks. Yeah.
Even approval.
Correct, this 10 days. We have no period in 10 days.
Asking for a page paragraph from that.
Well, you know, I struggled with that because I thought there was another solution that they could just rebuild. And I found that in the code. And tonight I put up my computer for the first 45 minutes. Yes, the code.
So if our internet ever goes down, we can just ask Alan. All right. But those were my only updates. Again, I appreciate your feedback. We will make some adjustments for the next set of packets and let me know if it didn't address what you were hoping it would, and we can try it.
So in a situation where we wouldn't have a motion, what happens if they get an issue? Because frankly, I have a motion forward. So we would have discussion on it, and I was in the middle. So can you clarify what the process is?
I could have moved to deny, you know, if nobody had made a motion. You know, I always try to be the last one to make a motion. You know, some jurisdictions that don't allow the chair to, they were a little more lax on that. But nobody had made it, I probably would have made the motion to do it. I struggled with that. I spent a lot of time working my coach to be so permissive.
Is there any your views on short-term rentals?
So at this time,
Short-term rentals.
At this time, we are looking at the code and including it in the code update. In the informational presentation, I'll make sure that we highlight what we're going to do with short-term rentals. Right now, we're planning on extending the moratorium through the end of the year. We did get an extension on our DOLA grant to complete the zoning code update. Our previous deadline was August, and as that's very fastly approaching, we did get an approval and extension through the end of the year, so we'll have that moratorium aligned with that. And so hopefully when the new code gets adopted, we'll have a new set of STR regulations.
Right now, As far as like, moratorium, et cetera?
I believe it was late August. Yeah, I thought it was in August.
October 31st.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey.
So
October
now
31st.
you send it to the end of this year.
That's correct, just so that we can make sure, I guess we'll have to make sure that the zoning code is hitting the deadlines that, or the hearings that I'm anticipating, and if it does, it shouldn't be an issue. But just in case those hearings get pushed back a set or a couple of weeks or something like that, then we'll be able to extend that moratorium, just make sure we have those new regulations in place before it expires.
Well, just so you're aware, in my world, that's the number one question that I get by far. So, you know, the two separate issues are, to delay church and rentals.
Right, we have had conversations about decoupling those two topics. And right now it seems like the code committee is wanting to keep them together at this time. I understand for sure.
Anybody else? Meeting's adjourned.
Yeah, I can say that.